for the institutional growth. Today, we have an eminent personality, Dr. Thillai Rajan, with us. He will be addressing on case teaching and case writing. So before that, I would like to give a brief introduction about him. Thillai Rajan is a professor in the Department of Management Studies and Center for Research on Startups and Risk Financing at the Indian Institute of Technology, Madras. He is also an associate at the Mosawar Rahmani Center for Business and Government, Howard Kennedy School, Harvard University. His research interests encompass startups, ventures, and SMEs. During 2009 to 18, he edited the annual India Venture Capital and Private Equity Report. In 2020, he played a key role in the formation of Innovation, Venturing, and Entrepreneurship in India Network, a multi-institutional consortium to research on innovation and venturing in India. He is also a co-founder of Inno's Venture Engine, a startup set up to address the pain points of early stage entrepreneurs. With this brief introduction, I here present Dr. Thillai Rajan, sir. Sir, over to you, sir.
Yeah, okay, thank you so much. So it's a pleasure to welcome you and meeting you all. But unfortunately, I'm not able to see anybody in person. And is that somebody that participants can turn on the videos? Is that normally allowed or?
Sir, because of the network issues, we have asked them to not to on the videos. But yeah, participants can do that.
Yeah, thank you so much. See, otherwise what happens is, I don't know who's on the other side. It becomes like speaking against a wall.
Yes.
And it's particularly in this virtual setting, because we are not able to meet in physical presence. I feel it is always better to at least interact in person. So anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity. Is there anybody in this group from Chennai or near about Chennai? Nobody?
I'm from Hyderabad, sir.
Oh, okay. Hyderabad is a little far from Chennai. I'm saying in and around Chennai. Anybody in and around Chennai? Dr. Rashmi, do you know any participant registered in and around Chennai?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Maybe yet they have not joined.
Okay. Now the reason I am asking is that because there has been tremendous rains in Chennai, right? And I don't know, anytime the power could go off or the network could be a problem. So I am unsure whether I'll be able to join back, because I don't know when the power will come, right? The whole city has been without power for the last 2 days, and many locations yesterday whole night there was no power. I'm staying in the, fortunately staying in the IIT Madras campus, and so far there has not been any problem. But I never know, right? When the power goes, we're not sure. Normally power does not go, but it goes, we're not very sure when it will come back, right? So I'm just putting this as a disclaimer up front. It is beyond my control if should something happen. And given the current situation, I'm not sure. So today, IIT Madras had a Senate meeting. I think all of you might be aware, right? The Senate meetings are all fixed well in advance. It is posted in the institute calendar. And so this morning, because of the inclement weather so much, so they have even cancelled the Senate meeting and rescheduled it to a different day. So I'm just trying to say that this is something very unusual. Chennai, which is known for this drought and water scarcity and all of this. Right? So today, it's a very, very different situation in terms of so much of water. So apparently it might have probably rained about 30-35 centimeters in the last 2 days, right? Which for a city like Chennai might be a very difficult thing to manage. Nevertheless, it's a pleasure to be here, and it always makes me nervous when we walk into a room and session where we have other faculty colleagues. So we are all used to walking into a classroom where there are students, right? We rarely get a opportunity to speak and exchange ideas among ourselves. Right? I think for some reason or the other, it very rarely happens unless until we go for some conferences. See, if you actually go to any other practice, people have a chance to meet other practitioners in the same. For example, doctors have the doctoral conference where they interact with other doctors. Engineers have these kinds of events. But for teachers and people who are talking about lecturing and so on, there are rarely any opportunities where we can interact with others and then exchange ideas, learn from each other, find out what is the best practice and so on. Right? So therefore, whenever there is an opportunity that comes this way, and if I'm able to, I usually try and make the best use of this option. So today I am here because it is a wonderful opportunity for me to be able to speak to I mean we are really talking about close to 40 participants, right? It's a wonderful opportunity to meet all these 40 participants, try and understand what are the issues that we are facing, and then see how to basically at the end of the day, I am hoping that I will be able to learn a lot from each of you, and I will also be able to share my own experiences in the next maybe about an hour or so. So I'll briefly tell you about my background, and see, ultimately we all have our individual style, right? I think it's very important that we retain our individual style, because all of us in our college days and in our school days, at least each of us would have been inspired by a couple of teachers, right, whom you loved the most, right? They were brilliant, they were too good, the students liked them, the way in which they explained was really good, and so on and so forth. Right? And however it may be, but if we try and be like them, right? If we try and be like the superstar teachers that we might have heard, then we can become an utter failure. Right? And in fact, this is something that was also told to me. I attended a case study program at the Harvard Business School. So Harvard Business School, as you may know, is one of the major proponents of using case study teaching in management, in business and management. So they are fairly well known, and in a workshop there, that was one of the first advice givers. So let us try and develop a style that each one of us are comfortable with. Right? It is it should not be something that what we think others are doing. Right? What works for others might not work for us. So emulation is a recipe for disaster in the class. Right? We cannot try and be the superstar teacher that we all know of by doing exactly what he is doing. That is simply not possible. Right? But on the other hand, we can become our own superstars by following what we think suits our style, right, the best. So to cut a long story short, like so many of us in this group, I have also been inspired by some very great teachers, starting from my school, college, and post-graduation, and so on and so forth. But by the time I started teaching, I realized that I need to do something that's so unique of me, right? I need to develop something that reflects me, as a person, that reflects my thoughts, my actions, and so on and so on. So I obviously did not go back and then compare and benchmark myself with some of the best teachers that I have come across, but instead I consciously, right, over a period of time, I consciously started cultivating what I thought is something that is very comfortable for me to handle in the class. After engineering, I went into business management. I studied at IIM Bangalore. So IIM Bangalore in those days was trying to get a mix of both case study based curriculum and the traditional quantitative method, right? It was a mix of both. And then after that, when I got into teaching, I was doing some part-time teaching while I was working in the industry for a while. And then when I got into full-time teaching, at IIT Madras. So IIT Madras, as you know, is today the #1 institution in the country. Right? I mean, for technology and engineering, the business school is very small. It's not really a big school. So when I got into IIT Madras, the mode of teaching did not involve significant use of case studies. Because many of the faculty members who are teaching at IIT Madras in those days, they all had done their PhDs from technology universities like IITs and other technology institutions, but not from a business school. So I, who had training, I did my PhD from a business school. So when I joined IIT Madras, the method that I was most comfortable, that had kind of been trained, was the use of the case study method. So I started using very extensive use of case studies in my classes, and I believe use of this case study method was resulting in, I think that was a major reason for two outputs, right? Two outcomes. One, I started enjoying my teaching. If I had probably done a more traditional method of pedagogy, I might not have enjoyed my teaching career so much. So I started enjoying my teaching. And second, more importantly, just because I started liking it, just because I was enjoying doing what I was doing, it rubbed off on the students as well. Right? So the students in my class, they started liking my classes. Right? They started participating more, right? And they got very good student ratings. I mean, very good teacher ratings, and so on and so forth, right? And I consciously looked at strengthening my practice of doing case studies, right? So this is what my quick background is. And the next, maybe an hour or so, I will probably take you through some of my thoughts and how I shaped my own teaching, and what are the kind of mistakes I made in my initial years and how I have corrected over a period of time, and what are the various activities that is involved in case study teaching, and so on and so forth. Right? But before that, I just felt that are there any questions that we can start with? Because I can keep saying something that what I would like to say, but at the end of it, I also want to make sure that what I say is relevant. So if there are any questions, I can kind of start my presentation around those questions that you have, because I know these are all very important. These are all questions that concern you. These are all questions that can be of importance to all of us.
Sir, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Good afternoon, very good afternoon, sir. So my question is, in the management teaching, as rightly said by you, that, case teaching makes the learning more interesting, more practical approaches there. I have used many cases, handled many cases in the classes. But if you can tell us that how to introduce a topic with the help of the case study, because after explaining the topic, that task is less challenging. But if you want to introduce a topic by the case study itself, then it is a quite challenging task. So if you can guide us regarding that.
Okay, thank you. I will also touch upon this. Okay, maybe if you can just maybe a quick introduction about yourself, that'll be nice.
So I am Dr. Archana Tiwari. I'm teaching in Jagran Lake City University, which is situated in Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh. It's a private university.
All right, okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, myself, Dr. Sabia Mufti from Department of Management Studies and Commerce in University of Kashmir.
Oh, okay, nice.
Sir, basically, as you said, as you started your class with case studies. Sir, basically, you are getting the cream among the students in IIMs and IITs. quite obvious they are very much acquainted, they are very much we can say learned students, as compared to the students who are studying in a government owned institutions or even though private owned institutions. So for them to start with case study, it seems some alien is coming and something it's they are they are teaching us some science. So they feel so much uncomfortable unless and until we are not we make them familiar with topics by showing them presentations, by ppts, by lecturing. Afterwards they get acquainted with the topic, then we can introduce case in the class. But that too they are not showing that much interest in cases. It seems to them that madam or teacher is burdening us more. They have kept internal marks for that. She is just escaping. She is killing the time, nothing else. But how to make them that? How to just? I want to know from you, sir, as you are a learned speaker and you are also experienced teacher, sir. Sir, how to indulge them? As my one of my colleague also said, she asked a pertinent question, that how to start the topic. My question is related to that, that how to indulge the students.
Right. Okay.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
even I would like to add on, ma'am, sir. Actually, what happens, they come, I mean, you will send them a case study, maybe it is a Harvard case study, you will send them a case study beforehand, but they will not read the case study before the class. So it becomes
Exactly.
very tough to indulge them into discussion because they are not aware. So half an hour we have to devote for the, going through the case again and again, then only we can start with the discussion. So that is the issue.
Exactly. That is the issue we most of the teachers are facing, sir.
Right. Okay. Wonderful. Okay. Good. So I'm just noting down, and then I will try and address how we could address some of these. I will share the inputs that I received, and I also talk about my own experiences on how I kind of face these situations. Yeah, wonderful. Any other questions?
Even sir, one more issue is that they are not able to, align the theory and the concepts with the case study. They just random answers comes for the solution of the case study.
Okay.
So maybe that generalization of the concept is not there.
Okay.
Especially I want to add something, especially in the when the person is teaching ethics, it's important that it should be started with cases. But they are feeling no, they are just killing the time, they are just wasting our time in the class. Sir, it's very difficult to handle these things, sir. Please help us out.
Yes. I think these are all problems that each one of us, are facing, and always dealing this is a challenge. So definitely, yes. Let me touch upon this one by one. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Rachna. I'll just see if there are any more questions. I just take them now, or I can take it along
Sir,
the way. I'll
sir,
start if there are any questions. Yes,
this is Arindam this side.
yes, yes, Professor. Arindam.
What I want to know, sir, with the current situation, see, case studies are being built with whatever is happening with the economy, the industry, or some organization is doing something. A new thing is coming, or they are in a transformational stage, or they are doing something with their product. So, in and around that, case study is being built. So, what I want to understand that if we go to most of the case studies, it's of the foreign land for them. Like you were talking about Harvard Business School case studies. So those case studies are actually being developed for understanding the organizations which are outside the country, somewhere in US, somewhere in Canada, or in Europe. But what is happening in the country and in and around the industry, how to develop or how to indulge, how it's more in line with whatever other madams have told about, that how to start the brain juices in their head, that they are aware, they are made aware about the situation, and they try to find out a solution. Right, sir?
Okay.
And also in what I like from what I would like to understand and learn from you, that can you guide us in the thing that a, a case study can be understood and resolved through different ways. So which is the best way which we as professors can help the students to understand? There might be multiple ways of resolving a problem in our
Right.
daily life, right, sir? But there would be a way which could be understood well by them, or is could be experienced by them, and they can understand it very easily. That's
Okay.
what I want to understand, sir. Thanks a lot, sir.
Thank you, Professor Arindam. Any other, anyone else who would like to add to this list that we have? Or we could just start with this and then we can take questions as we come along. Okay, I think Professor Varaprasad, I think you have something to say.
Sir, just a minute, sir. Sir, I only need some good resources for finding case studies, sir. That's it from my side.
Okay, resources for case studies. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Fine. So thank you so much. And let me start off with some of the questions that has come. And I will also directly touch upon my experience as we go along with this. Okay, the first question is, can you really introduce a topic by way of a case study? Right? For example, let's say, I am from the finance area. So I'll take example from the finance area, but then it could be anything. Let's say, for example, how can we introduce some things like capital budgeting or valuation? Can we really do it as a case study? So when I joined Iit Madras, and then I had an opportunity to be sent on a case study program to Harvard Business School. I mean, within the first 2 years, I managed to get an opportunity, and I went there. So I was very keen that I should. Before going there, I had also doing case studies, but then I was very keen that I should somehow fine tune the art of case study teaching. So I kind of went there. And so there I had a chance to look at it in detail, right? How they use case study pedagogy, right? So one of the first thing that I found there was there, in a course, if it's a case study course, there are no lectures, right? All the classes in the course are case study course, right? Each and every class will be a case study, right? The instructor does not talk anything about the concept or the topic at all. Let's say, for example, if you're talking about zero-based budgeting in cost accounting, he will not talk about it, right? What they do is they assign the reading material for the particular session, and the student is expected to read the reading material, and based on the understanding of reading material, they're supposed to read the case study and then come prepared for the case study. So the recommendation that was given was, if you are following a case study approach, then you should make it as a completely case study based course. That is the best way to make it very effective. I mean, I was given a lot of examples and then say that now this is the reason why it has to be a completely case study based course. Right? So what I did, I completed the program, and then when I came to Iit Madras, I mean, you were eager, right? I mean, you're very, very fresh from all the knowledge. And I said, okay, fine, let's try and implement whatever I learned at the business school. At Harvard Business School is a temple for case study based teaching. So let me try and implement it. So I have no qualms in sharing with you that was a miserable failure, right? So you use something that is so successful in a context like Harvard. I followed almost all the principles that they said is essential for case study based teaching. I tried to implement it in the same format in my own classes, but it's a complete failure, right? See, one is I can always go back and blame the students, saying that, you guys are not preparing enough, and for the method to be successful, you have to cooperate and so on and so forth. But then, when students are going to be students, right? I mean, we cannot really do anything that can, make them change, right? Or we cannot force them to change, right? But ultimately, at the end of the day, the experience was not very pleasant, either for the students or not to me as a faculty, right? So I felt that somehow I did not fine tune the pedagogy to the context in which I was teaching. Right? So immediately after that first semester experience of a very suboptimal, experience and feedback from the students, I said that I should kind of just ignore whatever was given to me at the program that I attended. So let me try and do something that I think will give results in the setting that I was operating. So then what I did is I went back and then redid the course schedule, because for whatever you may like it, the culture is that in the Indian context, people expect the instructor to go a little bit of hand holding, right? They don't want a lot of complete independent learning by themselves and then come to the classroom only to discuss, right? The students, in my experience, want the teachers to take their hand and walk them along, right? Right? That is what I felt is a nature of the expectation here, right? So ultimately, if the learning has to be successful, then we have to meet the student expectations, right? We have to ensure that they are able to comfortably take away whatever is being taught to them. So I went back and then I kind of redid the pedagogy, which then led to a mixture of multiple methods in the same course, right? Then I actually introduced the traditional lectures. Then I introduced case studies. I also introduced simulation exercises, right? So instead of making only a case study based course, I was trying to then utilize all the pedagogies so that we are trying to give comfort because some students may not be very comfortable with case studies, right? Many of them will feel that you listen to a lecture, you solve a few problems are there at the end of the book, and when you get the correct answer, you feel satisfied, right? You feel comfortable that you have mastered the subject. Right? So that's a very artificial comfort, right? I mean, we all know solving a problem is not about learning about the subject, right? One has to see now how one is able to apply to real life situations. But students, whether we like it or not, they get a lot of comfort in finding a solution for a problem. Right? So I realized that for students of those times, we need to do something, right? So that they can come out of their shell of solving problems to look at decision-making situations. Right? So instead of throwing them at the deep end of the swimming pool, right? When we learn swimming, what do we do? Initially, the instructor said, "No, let's practice in a shallow pool so that you kind of get comfort, get used to the water, right? Get used to." So then I started in the initial parts of the course, right? I started following a more traditional lecture-based schedule, right? I go introduce a topic, give a lecture on the topic, and then I solve a few problems. Right? Students get comfort, okay? And gradually, I kind of then move away from very structured problem solving to unstructured problem solving. So what I do then is, after about a few classes, I said, I take an example from a newspaper. Right? One of the things that I do in my classes, whether it is an undergraduate class I teach or in a postgraduate class, either in MBA, even I teach a course for the BTech program. I teach a finance course for the BTech. So there also I tell them that you have to start reading newspapers, right? Newspapers are very, very important aspect where you try and learn what's actually happening in real world. So I encourage students to bring the newspaper every day to the class. So by the middle of the course, what I do is I start taking the day's newspaper and start discussing the news items that is there in the paper. So there is a gradual transition from a very structured problem solving to unstructured problem solving. So newspaper is a very unstructured problem solving, right? We take up a news item, we discuss it, find out why they did a certain things, what could be the reason, and so on and so on. So after that, when students are getting a little bit comfort, right, with a very unstructured method, I deal with what is called as caselets. Right? Caselets are slightly longer than newspaper articles, but then caselets does not take a whole class. Right? Caselets, for example, can take about 30 minutes of discussion time. Right? So we do a little bit of lecturing and then go to the caselets. And then in the last 30% of the course, then I have to full-fledged case studies. Right? So by the time students are gradually getting prepared to a very unstructured mode of learning, and they start responding well when you start using case studies. Right? I have not found so much of difficulty in making them understand concepts using case studies. Right? But what I do is, I bring the concepts towards the end of the class, not at the beginning of the class. Right? Beginning of the class, I kind of tell them that this is a decision-making situation, right? So the way I kind of look at is from solving problem to making decisions, right? So that's the transition I take them through in the class. Case study is not about solving a problem. There are no solutions in a case. It's about how one deals with the situation, right? And in any given day, the response to a situation can be different, right? The response to the same situation can be different on different days. And there is no correct or wrong answer. So I try to elicit responses from multiple students and clearly telling them that nobody is wrong, right? But just that the assumptions might be wrong. So I always question on the assumptions, right? The assumptions on which they are trying to advocate a certain decision. And help them to understand why they can further improve on their decision making. So this process, I have found it to be very effective in the Indian context, in the classrooms that. So when I talk about, let's say, a capital structure, right, or innovation management, I don't really start with the concept, right? I try and discuss the case. And after discussing the case, when we try and generalize the key learnings, and those key learnings I try and kind of relate it to the concept that we are trying to discuss in the class. So then what happens, the student suddenly feels that whatever that's been discussed in this class suddenly becomes very, very clear, because the concept is there. Right? The concept comes at the end of the class, but not at the beginning of the class. So this I thought was very helpful for me in dealing with the case studies. Right? So that is the first question that I wanted to know. How to introduce a topic in a case study. To summarize, using case studies for topics, I think it is best when it is done in the second half of the course, second half of the last 1/3 of the course. So that time students are comfortable. Second, in a case study, rather than starting with the concept, we start with the case study and then end the case study class with the concept. So that I found to be more effective. So that is one. Right? The second question that I think you have all posed is how do you engage the students, right? How do you excite the students? And today I think all of you, whether we like it or not, right, we are all facing a lot of pressure, right? So as teachers, we are competing with so many people, right? And people want the teachers to be performers, right? I mean, I don't know whether they like it or not, right? The students want the teacher to be entertainers, like Shah Rukh Khan or Rajnikant, right? I mean, they all constantly being fed off this, right? This short video clips, and they expect each and every class to be as interesting, and it becomes very difficult, right? Because many of us are not born to be entertainers. I mean, some of you might be very good, but then many of us are not born to be entertainers. And on top of it all, today there has become another popular thing, right? What is called as a stand-up comedy. Right? People expect classrooms to be like stand-up comedy sessions. I mean, it is not possible. Right? So therefore, it becomes even more challenging or difficult to get the attention of the students. And students want interesting. I mean, we cannot give some. We are here with a job, right? Our job is to ensure that the students at the end of the day, they take with some clear learning outcomes from the course. Right? We are not there to entertain them, but then whether we like it or not, the students' expectation is that we want the classes to be interesting, right? So how to make it interesting? So I've kind of realized that the way in which we present, I think it's equally important. We have to introduce a bit of drama into the class. I mean, there is no other go. Right? If we have to somehow capture the interest of the students on their own come to the class without being compelled for meeting the attendance requirements. If we have to do that, we have to change our style to introduce a little bit of performance. I think there is no other alternative to that. We can follow our own styles, no problem. Right? We can be an angry young man, or we can be like Charlie Chaplin. Right? It doesn't matter, right? But we can have our own style, but at the end of the day, I think we need to be able to perform. And what I have understood that helps to perform is preparation. Right? Thorough preparation in terms of what we are going to teach and what are the questions that you are going to ask. What is the opening question? When I enter the class, what is the opening question? Right? That has to be very clear in the mind. So if one is well prepared, then my experience has been that the performance in the class is a lot better. See, finally, when I enter the class, I might actually not follow what I prepared. On the spur of the moment, I could get a spark and I could completely follow a different thread. But as you all know, that spark would not have come at that moment in the class when I am standing in front of 100 students if I had not spent time preparing before the class. So today what happens is, initially when I started to teach, every hour of class means that I need to put 3 hours of preparation before the class. That was the kind of preparation that I was getting involved. But now with about 10 to 15 years of experience, that preparation time has gone down. But it's still, for 1 hour of teaching, it is about 2 hours of preparation before the class. It still takes considerable amount of preparation time before the class. So why I am saying this is very simple. I think we are discussing the question, how do you make the students indulge? How do you make the students interested? I personally felt that when the student sees the the instructor or the faculty is more committed or well prepared, then the students automatically become committed. Right? When the instructor is able to answer any question thrown by the student is challenged. Right? So normally what the students wants to somehow challenge the instructor, right? Ask questions that he is not able to answer. Try and say something that he is not aware of. But if an instructor is well prepared, then the students automatically get, start showing interest. So this is the first point that I would like to say. Right? How to indulge the students. The second is, tell them very clearly. Right? What is the objective of using the case method? And what is the best way to make the effective use of it? So I spent one session talking about the case study method itself, right? So I clearly tell them, a case study is not a problem solving tool. A case study is not a problem for which we need to find a solution. And I also push them, right? I also push them to think in the shoes of the decision maker. Right? So for example, the case talks about Smith. Smith is thinking about a particular situation. Then I tell them that they should not talk about Smith. Right? They are Smith. They are Smith. They should put themselves. Okay, thank you. So they should put themselves in the shoes of Smith, and then they should discuss the case, right? So that essentially helps, right? Clearly telling them how they should approach the case study. I even give them very simple instructions saying that you should read the case study in groups. How to read the case study, right? I tell them, give clear instructions, right? First time you read the case study very fast. Second time, you look at some of the key points that you need to find out and then focus on these key points very clearly. Third, form groups, right? Form study groups among yourself and discuss the case study within you, right? There are case questions that are given for each and every class. Discuss the case questions among you and then come to the class. So I was able to set them because many students do not know how to prepare for the case study, right? I give them the benefit of doubt. It's not that they don't want to prepare. It's just that they don't know how to prepare. Nobody has clearly told them how to prepare well for a case study class. So therefore, I tell them this is how you should prepare and please follow accordingly. The third, what makes a case study class interesting? Can anybody tell me? I mean, I'm looking for a single word. What makes a case study class interesting? I mean, there could be several, but I usually find that single word is what makes a case study class interesting.
Hello,
So
sir.
discussion.
Discussion, yes, yeah, very good.
Involvement.
Involvement, yeah, good. Anything
Familiarity
else?
with the terminologies used in case. Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The familiarity of the student, the terminologies used in that particular case means level of understanding.
Right. Okay. So familiarity and the level of understanding is very good. It is not very theoretical. Excellent. Anything else?
Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello.
I think about the background of the case study, like if the case study is related to, for example, Mr. Mukesh Ambani, so the student should be aware about who is Mukesh Ambani, like the background. Like you said that you always encourage your students to read newspapers. So through newspapers, they will be able to know the background of the case study.
Okay, so background, familiarity with the case studies. So if somebody is familiar with the Nirma soap, and if you do a case study on Nirma, then obviously the student is excited, right? So that is okay. What else?
Sir, objective of the case study, that's important. That what is the objective of this case study? Why we are studying this case study? What is the purpose of case study? Why this case study is being used here when we are having other cases also? Why I selected this case only? So that would also help out, sir. Thank you.
So very good point. So why is the case study and making the students realize why we have chosen that particular case study? Yes, I think it's important. Okay. Any other point?
So the problem in the case makes it more interesting.
Problem makes the case more interesting. Yes, the decision making situation makes it more interesting. Very good. Okay. Anything else?
Sir, a different way to see a problem and find a different solution.
Okay, different way to see a problem and see a different way. So really look at multiple perspectives, right?
Yes, sir.
Looking at it from multiple perspectives. Is that what you are meaning?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, fine. Got it, right. So that is also there. I mean, that is something very close to what I have in mind, but yeah, not exactly, but then very close, right? Any other point?
Sir, it is a very good tool to face real problems.
So very good tool to face real problems. That's very good. Okay. Yeah, that is also true. Okay, the word I had in mind.
Sir, it depends. Sir, it depends upon the way we have taught the student earlier in class. Means how well we are able to replicate the concept in mind of a student before solving the particular case. So it is being a teacher, it is our effort how well we have able to establish a particular concept in the mind of a student. I think so.
So how well you are able to establish the concept? Yeah, I think all of these are extremely correct. I am not saying but in my personal experience, as compared to problem solving, as compared to lecturing, as compared to simulation, the one aspect that I pick in a case study methodology that I found very effective is what is called as the element of surprise. Right? See, you actually as an instructor can take the class in a certain direction and then suddenly tell them that they are going in the wrong direction. And then you can turn back and then say that what they think was completely insignificant, you can proceed it in such a way that that is the most significant thing in the whole case. So usually when we try and bring in this kind of element of surprise, the students are completely taken aback. Right? They did not expect that kind of an angle to be brought into the class. It is there in front of them, right? The case study was there, right? All the facts and figures were there with them, right? But they have not been able to observe that particular angle unless until we point it out to them. So I have seen this umpteen number of times. It never fails. Introducing an element of surprise. Remember, as an instructor, we are like directing we are authoring, or we are the author of telling a story, right? only we know how we are going to tell the story. Student does not know, right? Student does not know the ending at all, right? So we can decide how the ending should be. So that I think is a very, very important element of case study teaching. I have personally felt that, right? And I consciously try and ensure that the key element that comes of the discussion is something the student would have least expected. So you kind of create this kind of surprise for a couple of cases, then the student is hooked for the rest of the course. So student will always come back and then say, okay, fine, today I seem to have solved all the angles of the case study. Let me try and find out what surprise today he brings to the class. But then as an instructor, we have multiple resources, right? If you manage to bring yet another surprise that the student has not looked into it, the curiosity further gets spiked. So the student is challenged. So the next day you will come even more prepared. Let me see what surprise that he can bring to the table. Again, you throw up a surprise. When I say surprise, trying to bring an element into the case study that the student is least prepared for. And the students at the end of the class goes with the feeling, aha, how did I miss this? Is this important? Why did it not strike me before the class? If we kind of live at that situation, then I think we have got the attention of the student. So why I call this surprise? Simply because of the following reason. Because every year, every class I do, I mean the same case study, I can take to a different ending. I can focus on a different theme. I can focus on a different decision maker. So once it is going to be Smith, the other day it's going to be John, right? If there are two people in the case study. So as an instructor, we have certain creative liberties in terms of how we are going to frame the question, how we are going to navigate the case study, which parts of the case study are you going to have so much of importance. I think we should fully utilize the liberties that is being given to us as faculty members in the classroom. Whatever liberties that we can take in terms of explaining the case study, I think we should fully take. So these are my thoughts in terms of how do you make the students indulged? How do you strengthen the participation? Right. So to summarize, I said three things. One is extensive preparation. If the student knows that the faculty is fully prepared, that rubs off on the student. Student first respects the teacher and he wants to challenge the teacher. Second, explain the rules of the game. How to prepare for a case study. Give them detailed guidelines on what they are expected to do whenever a case study is assigned for a particular. The third, bring in an element of surprise in the learning. That will always keep them hooked, right? Never know what the ending is going to be. So these are the three elements that I have personally found giving me a lot of benefits in involving the students. Okay. So that completes the second main question that was asked, right, initially. Any thoughts, any reflections, any questions on what we discussed so far? I'll be happy to exchange ideas.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Sir, in my class, when I start, when I'm starting the case deliberation, I usually indulge another point. I add another point that is role play. I tried students to play the role of the character. It would be clear for them, and we discuss the case. So, is it right way, sir? Is that is it good to indulge and add this role play in it?
No, I think you are doing an excellent method. So when we look at case study teaching, there are multiple ways to look at case study teaching, right? The most common thing is that I found is many of the instructors, they want the students to first come and make a presentation about the case study. Right? They assign a case study to a particular group. The student from the group, they come and make a presentation on the case study itself. Right? So what happens in that process is at least one group prepares the case study thoroughly well, and there are several people who not even read the case study. For them, presenting the case study at least helps them to be aware of what the case study is all about, and then so on, and then you do a case study. So that is one approach. The second approach is like what you have mentioned, is a role play. Right? Identify students, put them in the shoes of the decision maker, and then ask them to enact the situation. I think that's a very good tool. But the success of this will be good only if the students who are identified to the role plays do it well. One is you could probably identify them beforehand and tell before the class itself that they have to be doing this. Or second, you probably think this is a student who is going to do well if given an opportunity, and then give it to those students who can do it well. So this is a very important technique as well, role play. So sometimes what happens, just to ensure that the role play becomes more illuminating, instead of having two students do a role play, I play one of the roles and the other role is being played by the student, or the other roles are being played by the students. Right? So then what happens, I can bring in a lot more value to the role play, right? Because I'm fully prepared with the case study. But yes, the role play is one of the important tools that one can use in case study teaching. The third approach is what is called as the Socratic method. So many of you might be familiar with the Socratic method, which is question the student. Question the student. When the student responds, pose him another question, right? Push the student back to the wall. Right? Make him defend his assumptions. Put him in the hot plate. Embarrass him. Ensure that he is able to search for the right answers, right? That's a Socratic method of teaching. So I actually follow any of these methods. I don't normally have the students make a presentation because I felt that many of the students don't utilize the opportunity of making a good presentation. Right? So therefore, I end up discuss the case study right from I have certain role plays in mind in cases where it might be good. But otherwise, the most common approach that I use is what is called as the Socratic method. I question the students. So the important aspect in a Socratic method of teaching is what is going to be the opening question. I think that's very, very critical. So when you get into the class and start the case discussion, what is the opening question? That is going to set the tempo for the entire class and entire discussion. It's very important to have that opening question completely, mapped into the mind. The fourth method is to bring the case protagonist to the class and make them discuss the class. So if you are talking about a particular industry and the decision maker who is there in the case study, make him come to the class and let him discuss the case study situation. So then what happens is the students are able to see the person involved in the case study in flesh and blood in front of them. So they cannot say something and get away with it because the person who's decided, who's dealt with the situation is in front of them. So that gives a very different experience altogether. It's a very different experience altogether. So these are some of the ways in which you can use different tools. I mean, we cannot use the same tools, right? Because if you constantly do role play, students will become bored. We cannot find a case protagonist for each and every case to come and be present in the class. So we can choose multiple methods to make a case study. Depending on what kind of case study it is, we can use multiple methods to make the case study interesting. Any other questions on this topic, on student participation? See, I know I'm realizing that whatever I'm saying is something you would have all implemented, right? I mean, maybe you all would be aware of it. No, I'm just trying to be like a mirror. I'm just trying to share the journey that I went through myself and what I have found giving reasonably good results. So it's not that I'm kind of telling something new. Just please don't understand. So please also tell me if there is something that has worked for you. I would also like to know, right? So that I can, it will help me to, further improve my teaching skills. Right? Anything else on this participation? So if there is nothing else, then I will go to the next point that I talked about, that we has been burnt about. How do you generalize? Right? How do you generalize based on a case study based course? See, normally students are very comfortable if they can hold on to something very confidently. For example, if they've solved a problem and found a solution, then it gives them a lot of confidence. If they have learned the formula, if they have learned the theory, it gives them a lot of confidence. But in a case study approach, people are very uncomfortable because during the class there is no lecture, there is generally no formula discussed, and then at the end of it, there is no clear solution that we arrive at. there are some guidelines possibly, but there is no clear solution. So the students, they don't know what they can get hold of it, right? So many students think, have they learned anything at all in the class? Have they learned anything at all in the course, right? Which consists of series of case studies. So that kind of feeling is very normal, right? I mean, as a student, I also used to feel the same thing. What happened? I mean, all these case studies that we learned, at the end of it, what did we get from this? What is the new thing that we've learned? So what I now do at the end of the case study is, I clearly, kind of distill the key points that was discussed in this class, right? In essence, what we call as what is the moral of the story that we learned from that case study discussion. And then at the end of the course, I again compile all the learnings that we have done, all the case studies, right? If they're talking about 30 case studies that we have done in the class, the learnings from each of these 30 case studies, and put them together and develop what is called as the course knowledge summary. So when they are able to see, get a big picture perspective of what are the various things that has been taught in this course, then students become little comfortable. So this is what I would basically call it as generalization. So how do I look at generalizing? One, at the end of each and every case study, summarize the key learnings, or what we call as a moral of the story, right? What is the 1 or 2 line moral of the story that we can take away from the case study discussion? And then at the end of the course, put all the summaries together and try to create what is called as a knowledge map, right? We try to create a knowledge map that clearly specifies what are the areas and what are the insights that we have obtained and how they should apply these various insights as well. So this is how I address the problem of generalization. Any questions, any thoughts, any comments? The next point that has come up over is how to bring the local element, right? How to bring the local element in the case study discussion. So by constructing a case study where the student is familiar with the background, the participation of the students will be a lot better, naturally. But what is the problem that we are facing? So the problem that we are facing is to get good quality case studies that are written in the local context. And we don't really have so many good case studies that are written in the Indian context. So we have to accept that. So initially, when people talked about this particular issue, I used to tell them, right? I mean, fundamentally, people are the same, right? It doesn't matter whether it is John or whether it is Jawahar, right? So it doesn't matter whether it is Smith or Srinivas. People are essentially the same. We should not give too much of importance to the context. What would be the difference between Srinivas and then, let's say, for example, Smith? Right? The only difference could be the color of the skin, right? Nothing else. if human beings are rational beings, then the actions of Smith and Srinivas are likely to be the same in a given set of circumstances. So I kind of try and remove the importance that students seem to attach to context. Students have a lot of importance. No, I should actually look at discussing case studies only in contexts that are familiar to me. No, that is not at all important. Context is not important. The problem is important. The issue is important. So this I kind of emphasize right at the beginning. So we choose a particular case study not because it is in the context, but because that issue that is being addressed there, the issue that is part of the case, is critical. Right? That's why we are choosing a particular case study. That is one way to look at reducing the importance students attach to context. Second, see, it's our duty. I feel that it is a duty of case study researchers that we should, as far as possible, try and help students relate better to the local. Suppose students will be able to relate better to a case study on Britannia biscuits rather than, let's say, for example, Oreos, which is based in the US. So similarly, student might be able to better understand the context, let's say, for example, about, let's say, Hammam or Rexona soap rather than another soap brand that is based elsewhere. So then I said that we cannot keep on complaining about lack of good quality case studies. So it is our duty to write good quality case studies. So then I started writing case studies, right? I started writing case studies set up in the context that we are familiar with. And then I started teaching the same case studies in the class. For example, I wrote a case study on Bangalore International Airport. So most people will be familiar with Bangalore, or even if they have not been to Bangalore, they know that Bangalore is a major city in India. And then I started teaching the same case study in the class. So as a case writer, if I teach a case study that I write, the comfort that I have would be a lot better rather than teaching a case study that someone else has written, right? Because I have been through the process, right? I have looked at what is the problem. I have interacted with the case protagonist to get data. I have written the case study, structured my ideas, and tried to give enough data so that students will be able to analyze and so on and so forth, right? So I can teach a case study that I have written a lot more comfortably rather than using case studies written by some other authors. What else? So writing case studies that are local also helps to get the people involved in the case study to come to the class whenever the case is being discussed. So the protagonist of the case study, I try and bring him to the class because I know I can bring him to the class because he is locally available. Right? I can tell him this is the date in which we are discussing a particular case study. Can you please come and then interact with the students, share with them how do you make a decision when faced with a situation. So if we do that, then we are contributing to the pool of good quality case studies that is there in the Indian context. Because we have written the case study, we will be able to teach the case a lot more better. And third, we could involve the case study protagonists to be a part of this class which can subsequently help in the industry and institute interactions as well, right? Strengthening the industry and institute partnerships as well. So these are some of the tactics that I use to bring the local element in the case studies. Any questions? Okay.
Sir, I would like to ask one question.
Yeah.
Like writing a case study is a skill, right? That you cannot develop overnight. So if you can give tips on writing the case study, that would be great.
I'm sorry, what is the...
Sir, I am asking about the writing the case study. So it's a skill that you have to learn gradually. So if you can give us a tips regarding how to write a good case study, that would really help.
Actually, I don't think so, because we are all faculty members. We are used to writing papers, right? I mean, it is our mandate is that we have to publish, right? We have to publish research papers. And I think the difficulty of writing a case study is much lesser than writing a paper, right? So there is no major research that is involved. We can actually write a case study doing secondary research, and it is trying to kind of explain a problem. So I think that writing a case study, the writing itself is not. I would actually put that it's not very difficult at all.
Sir, if you're writing a case study on some organization, that you have to take NOC from them, is it like that?
So writing a case study is not different, but then choosing which case study to write, I think that involves, that is where the difficulty is, right? Because what happens in Indian organizations, they still have not matured enough to view the partnership with academia in a very constructive manner. And that's a very practical challenge, right? When you go to an industry and tell them that I want to write a case study about you, they will think that, oh no, there is somebody who's come and then he wants to find fault with our decision making. Right? So that's the first thing that people comes to mind, right? If I throw myself open, if I throw my books open, what happens if people find a fault, right? What will I lose my face? So therefore, to prevent that from happening, nobody will kind of cooperate, right? The tendency to cooperate is very less in the Indian context, because people are afraid. Oh, I will be criticized, right, for making a decision. Whether I don't know whether it's right or wrong. So therefore, we have to basically be able to identify people who will be comfortable, right? Who believe that making others aware of a decision making situation will helpful for their own decision making, right? It is a service that they can go to the youngsters of today, so that we are able to get good trained manpower. So it is important, right? It's important to have the cooperation of people who are involved in the situation in writing the study. You can take the approval, or you may not take the approval, because you can use fictitious names, right?
Okay.
You can interchange the names, but then unless until you are able to sit with the person and understand what actually happened, we may not be able to construct the situation in completeness. We will not be able to understand the constraints. We will not be able to understand the the nitty-gritties of the situation.
Yes, sir. Actually, I was asking if it is about the employee, you are using the, you are changing the name, right? Then also you need NOC or something like that?
Not really. See, mostly what happens is there are two types of case studies. Right? One is company-specific case studies. And if it is company-specific case studies, if you want to actually say the company by name and the people by name, then it is better to get the approval, right, for writing a case study. There are not many organizations that give permission. but there are some organizations that give. So it is better to work with organizations that are supporting these kinds of initiatives, right? I mean, no point trying to break our heads and work with organizations that are viewing the whole thing with suspicion. So, but we have to search, right? We have to constantly identify people and so on. Second, you can write a case study purely based on secondary research. Absolutely, you don't need any inputs from the people at all, right? So let's say, for example, you take any particular case study. I am thinking. So let's say, for example, many of you might be aware about this scandal in Satyam Computers, right? That happened, a few years back.
Yes, sir.
So this is a case study where enough material is available in public domain, and we can write a case study entirely based on public sources, in which case you don't have to take anybody's permission. That is an issue that is important, that many people are able to visualize and understand, and people will be more involved as well when we start writing these kinds of case studies. So there you don't need any approval, right? You can still write a case study. But I also mentioned the challenges, right? I mean, in this closed room, I can say, right? Once we were trying to write a case study on IBM, right? They kind of gave the permission, officially permission was obtained to write the case study. They gave the approval and so on and so forth. And then we interviewed a lot of people, looked at the data, and then read the case study. And then before we had to publish the case study, we send it to them for their approval, right? So when we send a case study, obviously we don't send the teaching note, right? Because teaching notes is your proprietary thing, right? You don't have to show what you are going to use the case study, what case study you are going to use for teaching, right? So you send the case study for the approval. So the person who mandated us to write the case study, she found it okay. Then they approved the case study. So we even started, we have sent it to publication, right? And after we send it for publication, it was reviewed internally, right? And after when it is reviewed by the worldwide corporate office, and then they put a major stumbling block saying that this case study cannot be published. So in the meanwhile, we have got the reviewers' comments, and the reviewers have recommended publishing the case study. The only thing that was pending from our side was to sign the copyright assignment form and send it. That's all. And in between the process, the company, which is none other than IBM, they came back and said that they can't give approval for publishing the case study. So all the hard work that we put together, went waste. The case could not be published. We could not publish the case without the consent, because that will have other ramifications, right? So we have to pull out the case study, though this was accepted by the reviewers, simply because the company did not give approval at the last minute. So we have to deal with this kind of situations, right? There is no other go. So we have to take it in our stride and then get on to the next project, right? Whatever it is that we are working on. But what I wanted to highlight here at this point in time is that if we want to do actively case studies, then it is important for us to not just be a case study teacher, but we should also be a case study writer. Right? So that transition from just using other case studies to us writing our own case studies is a must. And when we start doing that, the repertoire that we have for doing case studies is, gets much more enhanced. Our confidence in doing case study classes becomes a lot better. So I would like to encourage each one of you, right, in case you are looking at case studies, you may start with teaching other case studies, because that's where you start. but it should not end there. Each of you should start writing your own case studies and then use it in your classes. And use it in your classes before you can finalize the case study so that others can start teaching it, right, in their courses. All right, so this is what I have to say about case study writing. Any questions? Okay, so there are no questions. I have one last question that we thought we will discuss before bringing this to close, which is what to do in a situation when a students are not prepared. Right? Second, when the students are fully prepared. Right? So let me talk with the first situation, what to do. Right? You enter a class fully prepared and then you realize that there is no student who is prepared, who has not read the case. The students have not read the case. They have come to the class without reading the case. So what to do? So the only thing that can be done is preventing such kind of occurrences from happening. Because if a student comes prepared, we cannot deal with the class. In a case study discussion, we cannot deal. So we have to put the rules of the table up front, saying that there is a contract between the student and the faculty. And what is the meaning of a contract? The meaning of a contract is both the parties who are part of the contract will have to fulfill their obligations of the contract. So the instructor will have to upfront say that in this course there is a contract between the student and the instructor, and the contract is that the instructor will come prepared for the class and the students also should come prepared for the class. So by stating this, you are putting yourself in the obligation of preparing. Right? You are stating yourself the obligation of preparing, and you are putting the responsibility of preparing on the students also. I think that is important. Right from the first class, ensure that students know that they have a responsibility in coming prepared. And we also try and tell them that it is not only their responsibility to the instructor, but it is also the responsibility to their fellow students. Right? Everybody has paid fees, not just to listen to the instructor. Right? They also paid fees to listen to what their batchmates are saying about a particular issue. They want to get the thoughts of the others in the class, not only the instructor. So this is very important, right? To communicate very clearly at the outset. If they don't come prepared, it harms everybody in the class. It harms everybody in the class. Second, so when you find that kind of situations happening when students are not well prepared, then you assign some of the students, right, who will be asked the question, who will be asked the opening question, so that they at least come prepared. And once the initial discussions, right, once the discussions on the initial questions start rolling, then others can join. So now comes the second part, right? What is the second part? The second part is what to do when the student is fully prepared, right? You go to a class thinking that it will be 1 hour or an hour and a half session. And within the first 5 minutes, the student who is well prepared comes out with a solution, right? Class is over in the first 5 minutes. Whatever preparation you had, right? The surprise ending, the discussion threads, all these things are gone, right? Answer comes in the first 5 minutes. Student is prepared, right? So what do you do? So it is for these particular kind of situations, we need to really look at the multiple discussion threads that we can have. So you can say it with reasonable amount of certainty that not all of this discussion threads that you are going to pursue would have been identified by the student. So therefore, when you make preparation, you're fully prepared, saying that if option A falls flat in the class, then I'll go option B. Or if option B also falls flat, then I go for option C. So this is the way in which you can, there are obviously these, very bright students, right? Who can quickly get to the hub of the situation and come out with an answer. So we need to have a game plan, right? As faculty members, we need to have a game plan and be prepared for surprises. Be prepared for surprises from the student side. Obviously, we cannot end the class in first 5 minutes and then say the discussion is over because some student has given the response. Okay. So I think these are some of the points that I wanted to share with you. So broadly, we talked about how do you use case studies to introduce a new topic? Should you use it at all? Second, we talked about how do you encourage more participants from the students. The third is a question of generalization. How do you generalize based on case study topics? Fourth is we talked about the importance or the need of introducing the local element in case studies. And fifth is how do you ensure that there is student participation. So these are the 6 major, I think, tactical points that I wanted to share with you. Are there any questions?
Sir, I think only one question left. That is, somebody was asking about the resources for the case studies.
Resources for the case studies. So today I think there are a lot of resources. There are established case study repositories which we can use. But second, as I was just mentioning, right, even the newspaper is a good resource for a case study. Sometimes the textbook at the end of the chapter, they also have a small caselets. So that is one, right? So the established ones are the Harvard Business School, and then there is Darden Business School in the US, and nowadays Emerald is also having its own case study collection, right? Emerald Emerging Markets Case Study Collection. Right? So they also have that.
Is it free access, sir? Emerald?
Emerald, I don't know actually, but if the library is subscribed to Emerald, I think one should be able to access it free.
Because what I'm using is Harvard Business Publishing, because they give the teaching notes also, so sometimes it helps the,
Right. Okay. Yeah, so there are different repositories. Sometimes you can, obviously you can write your own case study and then you can use that case study. But if you want a ready-made, case study repository and all that, then I think Harvard Business School is the best repository. They may not have case studies in all topics. They can be expensive, but then they will help you to substantially reduce the time it takes for you to put together a case study course. So they will have different case studies for each and every topics. So one can put together a case study course fairly easily using a Harvard Business School collection. So these are some of the resources for case studies that I can think of.
Sir, I guess there are no more questions. Participants? Yes, sir. Sir, I take this opportunity to thank you on behalf of Persuasion Engineering College for accepting our invitation and for spending your valuable time with us, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure being here. I hope this session was useful and it was getting some inputs. I enjoyed answering all the questions. I enjoyed listening to some of the tactical issues that we face as faculty members when we teach in classes. And I'd like to thank you so much, and I wish all the very best to all the participants for the rest of the program.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. The knowledge and experience that you shared today will definitely help us in case teaching and case writing more effectively. Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes, sir.